someone overvalued their toilet and wanted us to make sure that we got multiple images of the toilet.
Yeah.
Oh,
I remember that property well.
I'm not sure this is a selling point here. Taking bong loads in the kitchen while I'm doing photos and stuff. And gosh, I think that day my photos were super artsy fartsy and I didn't even touch a bong. You know, like
I will say, I know that he snuck into the house on a handful of occasions, even after the agent told us not to, but it was a weekend.
I thought she was going to blow my head off in the beginning. And then, once I realized I'm still alive, then my next, thought process was like thinking, this is crazy.
Hey guys, welcome to Define TV. I'm your host, Daniel Fefferman. Today we have Brandon Colbert with us. I don't even know where to start. I've known Brandon for over 20 years. He's a family friend. He's a work colleague. He's my photographer. He is literally my go-to guy. You probably recognize him from behind the scenes when we're shooting our real estate photography. Brandon does all of our family photos. He does wedding photos. He literally does it all. But I'm so happy to have him here. He's got a great life story, and I can't wait to dive into it. So, Brandon, thank you so much for coming on. Yeah,
quite the intro. Thanks, Daniel. It's a blessing to get to be here and do this with you. So
yeah, I know we've been trying, scheduling wise, trying to get these cameras situated. It's been a whole thing, but it's just so nice to have you here. So let's talk a little bit about your history, your experience. So you're from San Diego, born and raised, where you're one of the few unicorns like me.
Yeah.
After high school, you went to the Brooks Institute studying photography. And then after that, dove into being a professional photographer. So tell me a little bit about your history, how you got into photography, and let's go from there.
Yeah, sure. I started shooting high school parties when growing up with a 35 millimeter camera.
Yeah.
Then I got right into shooting, beach and lifestyle type stuff. And I just fell in love. I kind of just opened up my imagination, and I was always been kind of an escape artist from the get-go. So for me, this was the one, positive thing that I was doing. That was
kind of an outlet for you.
Yes, super fulfilling and healthy. So so I kind of ran with that. And so graduated from Brooks, came home and came back to San Diego. After that, I studied to be a newspaper photographer. At the time, all the newspapers were crashing, and they were letting go of everybody. So bad timing. Yeah. But I just applied all the ethics and everything I learned at school, and started being a freelance photographer.
And so, not to interrupt you, but is newspaper photography, is that called like editorial type photography, or are you telling stories? Like, what exactly were you studying?
So that would be,
or how does that relate?
Yeah, great question. So that's the journalistic part of things. So like really diving into stories, passion pieces, just real newsworthy type of events. So that's what I would, call that.
Awesome. Very cool. So you came back to San Diego. The newspapers were no more. Everything was going online, I guess. And so how did that evolve into, the real estate photography and, lifestyle and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, another great question. So for me, let's see, I think the best part about, coming back to San Diego after I graduated was, and then not having the dream job waiting for me, was I just didn't say no to anybody.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot of skills, just by surviving. And then I found out what I'm good at and what I love to do.
Okay.
And so it's a blend of both. And I always felt like what I'm good at, I can learn to love.
Yeah.
So, the beach and all that was just such a heavy calling for me. So I would watch the weather, and then I would run down to the ocean, and I would try to time these, perfect timing with the perfect clouds and all this. So that kind of drove the landscape, part of me.
Yeah. And I would imagine there was a lot of times where you boogied down to the beach and it didn't go as planned. So there was a lot of, process of elimination and trial and error.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely been wiped out by a few road waves before.
Yeah.
And I think that was a lot of the learning process, but understanding the tides and all this. There's so much to the photography part that's outside of the camera and the photography itself.
Yeah.
And so gathering all this information and being able to do a good job and understanding my surroundings is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would imagine that carries over into all the other types of photography, because you need to understand your subjects, but also understand what's going on in the background. And, when you shoot engagements, for example, and you're focused on just two people, but there's a whole world going on, around it, trying to make sure that you've got just the two people as the highlight.
That's exactly right. And I love working with people, so it's great.
Yeah.
I love getting to capture these intimate moments for these folks and just doing a great service to them.
Yeah.
And handling that with grace is quite an art.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like photographing cars or homes or landscapes, these are clients that just don't talk back.
Yeah.
So
sometimes
it's like,
the best kind of clients. Yeah.
Yeah. So I learned to love these things from kind of a distance and then celebrate them, in a new, different, unique way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I do.
That's amazing. Yeah. So what got you into, the big goal with this show is highlighting amazing people in San Diego, but then also tying it into real estate. So how did you get started in real estate photography, or how did that begin? I would imagine it wasn't a passion as much as it is now when you first started.
Yeah, I think, I don't really know. I can't even remember kind of my first real estate gig. I think I just, I don't know, I kind of stumbled into it.
Yeah.
I guess you would say. I think it was, I was photographing commercial projects beginning, actually, believe it or not. And then I worked my way backwards into real estate photography.
Onto the residential side.
Yeah. So kind of like from the artist, capturing, certain projects. Culver City project, before they put the railroad system in, I was asked to go, and photograph some of the commercial properties that were, most prevalent there, that stood out the most in the city, and kind of document the city so that when they put the transit in, it kind of flowed.
Yeah.
So it's things like that where I was kind of doing stuff on the back end.
Yeah.
That was kind of maybe not so, forward as a real estate job.
Yeah. But it also kind of tied into what you studied on the journalistic side. So you were kind of doing both at the same time.
Yes. And I feel like I've had a lot of crash and burn in the real estate as a photographer in the real estate. I mean, the industry is powerful, so they kind of decide what the trends are.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I go against the grain. That's just kind of natural what I do.
Yeah.
And in order to kind of be seen or, let things stand out the way I feel they're intended to be.
Yeah, exactly right.
Instead of what everyone else is doing all the time, that just becomes a bowling ball.
Well, and I mean, I think to that point, it's kind of the evolution that I've seen while we've been working together, for almost 10 years now. We started doing photography that was very like natural, kind of home and garden, softer colors, and, natural light, things like that. And it's now what the market is dictating is much different, high use of HDR photos, for example. And, we've had to change.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel, you remember we were shooting kind of like editorial home and garden style, lifestyle-y.
Really pretty,
kind of, just kind of a different style, using natural light and things like that when we first started. And what happened was these big, real estate companies came in, they started hiring photographers and then outsourcing, overseas. And what happened was that editing style became what what the industry standard is today.
Yeah.
And so all of the kind of the creative work is you kind of seeing it kind of disappear.
Yeah.
The human elements of things. So it's kind of it's how are we going to still be humans and kind of serve the the industry.
Yeah. And I think what we've ended up having to do is still you try and kind of put a little bit of that touch on it and that spin on these photos while still, appealing to the masses, and still doing, wide angle shots and things like that. But having the houses actually look the way that they are, and not having people see these photos that look beautiful and amazing, and then they come see the house and they're like, oh my God, this doesn't look anything like it.
Right.
I think that's one of the biggest things that we've run into is, you go show this house and your clients are like, oh my God, this is so photoshopped and edited. It doesn't even look like the house anymore. And I feel like we've tried to still keep it looking the way that it actually looks. And some photos don't turn out as great because that's just the way the house looks. It's not that the photos aren't good. It's just, we're keeping it real, I guess.
Yeah. And then kind of understanding what do people want to see?
Yeah.
What do they not want to see? Do they really not want to see the next door neighbor's house all dinged up outside the window, Yeah. In the past, we're like, let's get them in the door and help them fall in love with the house and like the beautiful parts of the house before they get to know their neighbors, Maybe the neighbor's a great person, but their car is a piece of shit, like,
exactly.
And that
right.
sucks.
Yeah.
But if are you like, what are you getting married to?
Yeah.
Like the inside of the home or, the whole overall, do you want, what is important to you? But, the hope is that we get people in the door so that they can decide what's important to them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I think.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, I think that goes exactly to what is important and what is and is not important when you're doing listing photos. The details, the little nuances, that get people excited, when they walk in the house and they get this feeling, or if there's a beautiful kitchen, or even as silly as it may seem, if there's an amazing bathroom, that's just gorgeous. We want to highlight those details.
Yeah, and Daniel, you from example, we've run into a couple of these situations where someone overvalued their toilet and wanted us to make sure that we got multiple images of the toilet.
Yeah, Oh, I remember that property well.
I'm not sure this is a selling point here, but it was important to them. Yeah. So we have to always remember who are we serving here?
Yeah,
and I think it's kind of a funny nuance of what we're doing.
I totally forgot about that. I mean, that was like, the seller was there the entire time during photos, and the things that he was pointing out as items of importance, we would have not thought twice about. And that just goes to show exactly right. Every person values something differently.
That's right.
So with a house, a listing, oftentimes, staging has always been important. But now the ways of staging has changed, right? So if a seller isn't willing to consider, staging a vacant house, now there's virtual staging options. What's your take on that? And we've had some experiences with it ourselves on some listings.
Yeah. I think in that, people want to see new creative ways to show the space.
Yeah.
And are they going to glance over a listing because it's, there's no furniture in the home and they can't really get a good feel for it.
Yeah.
Are they living local? Do they have the opportunity to go and
get physical eyes on the house?
Yeah, get physical eyes on the house. And in the current market, and things move fast.
Yeah.
So if they really want to if they really want the house, they got to get in there and
get a feel and visualize what it's actually like to live in the house.
Right.
And that's why I think the staging is so important. Is it allows people to walk into a room and say, okay, this is what it would be like if we were sitting on the couch watching TV or watching our kids play in the backyard, or this is how we would set up our office, because we've already done that for them. We've already staged it and helped them visualize it. And so with the virtual staging, what we've done recently is, what you've done is you take the photos, you are able to add, AI furniture or, virtually stage the house. So in photos, you're able to see what it's actually like without us actually having to put physical furniture in there.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Writing an offer is a big deal. And, and then making the dream for them, help showing them the reality of what it could look like for them. Where will they set up their desk? Where will their children be? Where's the space for them?
Yeah.
That's, that they love, the most. So, the virtual staging is a great way to kind of, celebrate the home in a unique way.
Let's talk a little bit more about this virtual staging. So, we usually do in-person staging, and we figured on this condo, let's try virtual staging. You dug into it and you found, okay, here's how I can take my photos and add virtual furniture to it. But being consistent with this protect, preserve, and serve, it's a tongue twister. You said, hey, we should add watermarks to this that say virtually staged. And so I was like, yeah, of course, that seems obvious. We want to make sure that someone, again, doesn't show up to this house, see these photos and be like, where's the furniture? And so took these beautiful photos, added furniture. The place looked insane. Like, you wouldn't even have known that it was virtually staged. But then I got an email from the MLS, right? And because we had words on our photo, I was at risk of a fine. And so, it just seems silly that I talked my way out of it, apologized, let him know that we were just trying to be as honest as we could.
That's right.
But, what's your take on that? Like, it just seems silly that by us trying to do a service, we were getting in trouble for it.
Yeah, I think the world we live in today is a little backwards, but as long as we are doing the ethical part of letting people know and being transparent about what we're doing. Yeah. Like, this is virtual stage. Heck, for someone come in and like measure out the size of the bed that was in the room, and it be off by, a few inches or something, and that could be, damaging or a disservice to them when, looking through the photos. Yeah. So by putting the virtual staging on the corner, we thought we were doing the right thing. Yeah. And I truly believe we were. Yeah. But unfortunately, the MLS, didn't want to have any of that part in that. Yeah. Which, I understand. They probably just don't want people putting their logos or
writing the compensation amount, nowadays, that because it can't be on the MLS, adding these little tricks. And I think in my conversation with them, they've have like an AI program that's kind of scraping all the photos and looking for words. And so that's how we got lumped into it.
And you nailed it. Talking about the AI, it's like the AI is getting better and it's so good. It's like, we're now having to question, is this real? Is this not? Yeah. Like on every step of the way in the world that we live in today. So I think it's, by putting that, I felt like we were, kind of setting the mark for the right thing to do and kind of navigate this new world. Yeah. But, perhaps.
Yeah. I think I would rather err on the side of doing something like that where we're, providing full transparency and then, ask for forgiveness, I guess. But, for agents out there, just so no writing on your photos. And the best thing to do is you put the staged photos, virtually staged photos, and then you put the regular photos of the house vacant, and then confidential remarks and description, right? Home is virtually staged, because, we can't have it in the photos, but we can still provide those disclaimers. And I think it's a necessity.
Yeah.
For you as a photographer and for any of the photographers, watching this video, how has your equipment changed? I guess it doesn't have to be specific for real estate, but just in general, as technology's changed, what are you doing differently from a technology and equipment standpoint that you weren't doing before?
Oh, goodness.
And I know that list is like extensive. So is it the type of camera? Is it the type of lens? Is it lighting? Has editing software gotten so good that you can overlook maybe certain lighting things, or like, kind of what's changed in your flow?
Yeah, I think, oh goodness, that's such a big question. But if I were to kind of, from where I started and where we are today, the tech has gotten so great now. There's been a few advancements in the last, I would say, 3 years that have really changed the way that I kind of photograph. Especially people. Yeah. Not to get too far into that, but Now we're 4K has been the industry standard as far as video goes for multiple years. I don't see that changing for a while.
Okay.
I mean, the quality is so good. I mean, the other thing too is, what are people streaming these videos at? 720.
Yeah.
So we're already far past that, and
Yeah.
they're still selling us on the next biggest.
Yeah. 4K, 6K.
Right.
Yeah.
And at some point, it's like people can't even, they can't even divulge it.
Yeah.
They can't even,
digest it.
Digest it
Yeah.
is what I meant.
Yeah.
Divulge.
Yeah.
They can't even digest it. So, I think we're to the point where we could be, maxed out as far as
for the time being.
Yeah, there's always going to be someone, pixel peeping or whatever they call it, where someone's going to zoom in 100x to see, the pixels on something. But I mean, the quality is so amazing today.
Yeah.
That there's not a lot of nuance to it.
And there's not a whole lot more that's needed. You're not like wanting for more when it comes to something other than little gadgets and, like your Meta glasses where you can show behind the scenes while you're shooting.
Yes.
So we obviously use it in real estate photography, and I've seen you use it in other, portraits and wedding photography, is the use of drones. Aerial photography is super important for us. How does that process work for you, when you're shooting a house, for example, of incorporating drone photography, or aerial photography, and then, your DSLR? Yeah,
it comes down to agent client needs. That's it. What do they need?
Yeah.
What's important, and how do I, do that?
Is it common for agents to request aerial photography?
It's almost expected now.
Okay.
When we first started out, people were upselling drone photography for like $500.
Yeah.
And now it's just like part of the deal.
Yeah, you're going to do it. It doesn't matter the size of the house, condo, 10,000 square foot mansion. It's going to get the same. The same package, or the same, aerial, interior, all that kind of stuff.
That's right.
Got it. Yeah. So, for you, running your own running your own photography business, how do you generate more business? What's your typical, way of acquiring new clients, and how does that work for you?
Oh goodness, it's always changing. There's social media is a bear to climb.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of trying to tackle that still to this day.
Yeah, it's a whole different animal.
Get an understanding for it, just because that's where a lot of the market is.
Yeah.
But I just kind of do my best to, just be transparent and honest. Let people know what I'm about.
Yeah.
And hope they value that as much as because I value people a great deal.
And your motto, right? Like, protect, serve, and preserve.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that is your ethos when it comes to working with clients. So we'll get into how you generate business, but let's talk more about that specifically, because I think that is what your clients find so much value, and that's why they refer you to their friends. So how did you come up with that protect, serve, and preserve? Yeah,
I think, I just kind of been asking myself, more recent, like, what's my purpose here? Mm-hmm. Anyone can take a great photo these days, but, there's just something, it's just such a part of me that it's, I have to kind of get out of myself. And part of doing that was kind of like, what is my purpose? How do I serve people, authentically, and in a way that just is kind of like, it continues to snowball. So, I mean, the protect is protecting the integrity of the images, protecting the integrity of the clients. Those are the things that I value. So that's the protect part. The preserve part is preserving the authenticity, preserving the ethics.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of the values that I stand by. And so that's kind of the way that, that's always the main focus.
Yeah.
And then serve is just be of maximum service to, the folks I'm so grateful to get to work with.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing. That's amazing. And I think that's why, whenever you work with a new client, they're always, they get their photos back and they're just like, oh my God, these are amazing. Who can I tell about Brandon? like it just, and it seems at least, we share an office together, right? So, hearing when, clients come into the office and they're going through photos with you and they're talking about how amazing, I hear them from 2 doors down, their excitement, and they leave and, they're posting it on Instagram and they're talking to friends about it. And, I think that's why there's such a referral base, book of business that you see growing.
Yeah. And I think that's the transaction part. It's like, when I think of transaction, my first thought's the money, right? Or the price. What's the value? All those are great questions. But for me, it's like, what's the transaction of love?
Yeah.
Because I care a shit ton. Mm-hmm. And, these folks, are sharing their heart with me through these intimate moments.
Yeah.
So it's my service to share that love back.
That's amazing.
And so that's kind of that's the transaction for me.
And that's not typical. Most people don't look at their job that way. It's more, transactional, not from a place of kindness and care and, wanting to serve their client. It's just kind of like a turn and burn, get the photos done, send it over.
Yeah. What you can do for me, what I can do for you kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's just,
yeah,
it's more free to live, in this with the purpose that I have.
Yeah. So that's awesome. And I think that, in the real estate industry too, it's very much for realtors. Some agents have a certain mindset of, okay, great, I just got to get through this transaction and then I'm done with these people. And others, like myself, are more focused on, okay, how can I be your agent for life? And how can I be there to support you, while leading up to the transaction and also after the transaction.
That's right.
Because it's so important to be there, be a support system. I mean, during a transaction, it's not uncommon for me to feel like a therapist, and it's just, you want to be there every step of the way to support them.
Yeah. And I've hear you field calls where it's not primarily about the, the listing or the property itself. I mean, hey, do you got a plumber? Or hey, like I need help with this. Do you know anybody?
Yeah.
Or, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah.
And I hear that. And like, that's inspiring because that's the love, right? Yeah. That's what we're transmitting.
Exactly.
And
right.
so it's really cool to get to hear and see you work. And
I appreciate it. And that's, I think, why when you love what you do, it's reflected in your interactions with people and everything like that. And like you've seen me work firsthand because I've worked with your family. We sold your mom's house, your brother helped him buy a place, helped Liz, your wife, with some, family properties. And so you've got to be on both sides of, the transaction, both the listing side and then the sales side, and see it all firsthand. With your mom, we were selling a house. She'd been through the purchase process. She's been through the sale process. So she was like, I'd say the pro. She's an expert. She's done this before. The veteran, I guess, is the best way to put it. Your mom was a veteran, and your brother was, the newbie. And so fortunately for him, we were buying a house in a new construction neighborhood. Fortunately or unfortunately, I guess, depending on how you look at it, because they make a lot of decisions for you. You're getting a brand new house, but depending on where they are in the build process, they've picked out colors, they've picked out flooring, they've picked out stuff potentially. So, with your brother, it was fun to get to work with him and his wife about, just kind of what this process looks like. Because when you've never done this before, it's daunting. And it can be scary. And you're not only having to buy a house, you're qualifying for a loan, and then you have to get insurance, which is a whole nother deal here in California. And there's just so many variables and facets to overcome and experience. And so with him, I just liked working with him. I think of him as family. Like he was a little intern for me, at one point before college when he was in high school, and when I had the little clothing brand on the side, and it was just a fun was a fun thing. And so getting to work with him and help him and feel like it's family, was super important. And I don't think there's any, things that he did, along the way. I will say, I know that he snuck into the house on a handful of occasions, even after the agent told us not to, but it was a weekend and no one was there. And, I told him not to, but whatever he does on his own, I can't control. So, that was kind of funny to get update photos. And it's like, oh yeah, you're not supposed to be there right now. But, when it's new construction, no one's living in the neighborhood and there's workers all the time, and there's no front there, for a period of time, there's no front door. So it's literally, you're walking through some studs, before there's even drywall. So yeah, that was fun. And then, with your mom, her house was gorgeous, with her interior design hobby or background, that she has. And it was stunning. We didn't have to stage it. We didn't have to do anything. And that house sold in an afternoon, I think. And we were talking about it after. I think it was a neighbor that ended up buying it, right?
Yeah.
And so that was cool, to get to experience that, especially in, a neighborhood that we didn't know what the activity was going to be like. It was a few years ago. It's the market has, ebbed and flowed on and off. And so we were just like, okay, we know this place is beautiful. We don't know, we know it's going to go overpriced, but by how much? And she knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
It was great.
How much overpriced?
I don't remember. It was a few years ago, but I remember calling her and, saying, hey, we need to sit down because we have multiple offers. And when I sat down with her and we actually started going through it, she was like speechless.
Oh, wow.
Because it was great. And she wanted to net a certain amount of money so she could go on to the next chapter.
Yeah.
So that was great. And then, with Liz's, your wife, she had her dad passed away unexpectedly, and he had, a portfolio of real estate. And so helping guide her through the process in a way that was, sensitive to what was going on, because it was, somewhat unexpected. So, being able to be mindful of that and, control or manage the process and not have her or her brothers really have to worry about anything or deal with anything. I think that was one of those situations where I was like, if you're cool, I got it, and I would just give her a check-in, hey, here's your option for A or B. And she could choose, but she wasn't having to, deal with a staging company, deal with a painter, deal with the things that a lot of sellers often deal with, but because she just wasn't in the position, from a mindset standpoint to be ready to deal with it, to want to deal with it, but still knowing, hey, we got to sell it.
Yeah.
And that's part of, you see all these houses we're photographing now, like they're old and they're original, and his houses weren't, but in the market we're in today and, the time in our lives, people are getting older and they're passing away. And so there's a lot of estate sales. There's a lot of family members that are moving out of their houses to downsize or, something like that. And the kids or the parents that are moving out, they don't want to deal with it, or they can't deal with it. And so that's definitely been something where, myself and Jessica, Sarah, we try to come in and provide a level of service that's like, hey, don't worry. We understand this is super hard, but we got it.
Yeah.
And it'll be fine.
Yeah. And I will say, as a witness, the compassion that you had was something that
I appreciate that.
I appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. Because you were in it.
Yeah. Yeah. We were definitely in crisis. It was unexpected. And I just felt like, there was no one better. It was a strong suggestion of mine. I truly believe in trusted servants, and that's the way, I saw you and at that time as like, there's no one else I trust to kind of help
I appreciate
with
that.
this. And so it was a strong suggestion.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that she went with you. I think you provided a lot of solutions that most agents would not be able to accommodate. So
thank you.
And I know that part. And it was hard for me to kind of explain that. But I'm glad that she kind of took the suggestion because I felt it was important, and you handled it with such grace. So thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate it. And there was quite an interview process because she had other family members that were, wanting to interview other agents and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, look, this is me. This is who I am. This is how I handle the process. If you want to go with someone else, I'll be disappointed. But I understand, and, I think after they went through the process of doing those interviews, I think they realized like, okay, I'm in good hands with Daniel. And, the fact that I've got a team of people that will make themselves available during the transaction, I think helps because you can always get a hold of someone, and if we need to have something done quickly and I'm not available, because I'm filming a podcast, or if, whatever the case is, that someone else will always be there. And I think that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got to witness you in action too, for sure. So from an intimate side of things. So yeah, super grateful for you, and you do such a beautiful job. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I think I feel like I take it personally when a client's not happy. And I'm a people pleaser, and just like, okay, how can everyone finish a transaction and be like, wow, that was easy. Let's do it again. Cause that's not, it's stressful buying a house or selling a house or renting a place. And so trying to make it as easy and painless as possible. I think is so important. You've been in a lot of houses. I mean, we've worked together for a long time. You work with a handful of other agents. Anything that you've seen when you've walked into a house that you're like, oh, probably should move that, change that, like just unexpected things?
Oh, like as far as like before I photograph it, or
here, like you walk into a house and there's a guy on the couch still in his robe, or bongs sitting on the counter, and I don't know, just what kind of stuff do you come in contact with?
Oh, I've seen it all. Yeah. Secondhand smoke and, all the guys getting frickin' taking bong loads in the kitchen while I'm doing photos and stuff. And gosh, I think that day my photos were super artsy fartsy and I didn't even touch a bong, like I don't even know.
Just from being in there.
Just from being in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
little
so
special
funny.
effects with the smoke and stuff. But I've seen lots of different stuff over the years, but by and large, everything goes super smooth. I mean, we're professionals here. So like if you're really serious about, your listing and serious about getting quality photos, then you'll take some pride in it. That's what I believe.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. And so I know we talked about Culver City. Any other projects that you've done that are real estate related that stand out? I mean, I know we have photos in the office of when Jack Murphy Stadium was being torn down. Like there's a lot of, because you do so many different types of photography, I would imagine there's a lot of different experiences, but is there anyone in particular that kind of comes to mind? House, commercial, residential, a current event, something that you have shot firsthand that you're like, this really stands out for me?
Yeah, gosh, I don't know if one thing stands out in particular, but yeah, Jack Murphy, Qualcomm Stadium, the teardown was important to document.
Yeah.
Just because there was a lot of good times, a lot of
history,
bad losses.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But that was a family thing. So a lot of families were ripped apart. What I felt was based on greed.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, so I just felt it was important to document from a journalist standpoint.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way I did that.
Yeah.
But a lot of great memories overall.
Yeah, exactly right.
But San Diego definitely misses the Chargers.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
They did so much for the community.
Yeah.
For my youngest brother with the blood drive, and so that part was sad when they left.
Yeah. To see that.
I asked him. I said, Trevor. I said, how do you feel? Like, that the Chargers are leaving. He said, you know what? They'll be there for the kids in that area.
Yeah.
And so I thought, wow, what perspective,
Yeah.
Because
from at the time, a young kid.
Yeah, because the blood drive and all that. I mean, he needed a lot when he had the surgeries and everything. He needed a lot of blood.
Yeah.
And the Chargers did a lot in the community. This community is built on healthcare. People come all over the world here to San Diego to get their medicals.
Yeah.
And their surgical procedures done. And that's kind of what we were known for. And the Chargers did a great job of intertwining with that.
Yeah, supporting that
from the
and
community
bringing
standpoint.
people, get them to participate.
So I think that was, to me, was the biggest loss when they left.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that for sure. I guess last question for you is, we see a lot of for sale by owners. What is the one piece of advice other than hire a professional? Because we all know that if you want something done right, you hire a pro. You're a pro, I'm a pro. That's the way you go.
Yeah.
But if someone's if they insist, I'm going to take my own photos of my house, do you have any words of wisdom? Or is it just, you're fucked, don't even try?
I mean, I've seen a few people do it, but
Very
I've also
rarely.
had the for sale by owners. The owners call me.
Okay.
They do I do the photos, and then
Yeah.
they do the rest. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's always probably better to have an agent that kind of can be the mediary, and can be of service in a way that the owner is so personal.
Yeah.
And so taking a step back,
You got to separate it.
You don't
You got to
know
have the separation.
until you obviously, but some folks are going to want to do it all themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. But don't do your photography by yourself.
No, iPhone photos are probably not going to cut it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like turning the phone upside down and turning it so like I see all these Instagram videos of here's how to shoot great things on your iPhone, which never work out for me. It always looks like junk, but yeah. So
what's the most interesting home that we photographed?
Oh gosh, put me on the spot. I mean, we've been through some pretty wild houses, houses that the seller has dug a basement in, which if you remember that house, you were photographing it. That was a trust sale or an estate sale. One of the beneficiaries was, facilitating the sale and didn't want some other family members coming in. You were filming the house or photographing the house, and a woman came walking in the front door and was freaking out as if you were breaking in to take photos. And then you turned into like a bodyguard, keeping an eye on her. And I remember you calling me, and then she was calling and freaking out. And that was a wild experience.
Oh my gosh.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was that was pretty heavy.
I thought she was going to blow my head off in the beginning. And then, once I realized I'm still alive, then my next, thought process was like, I got to watch this lady because I'm afraid if she tries to steal something, then I could be,
liable.
responsible or liable.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Here I am trying to take a photo, but I got my eye like this over here. I'm watching this lady just to make sure she wasn't in the drawers or nothing,
Yeah.
And so I started following her around.
Yeah, exactly
And
right.
I was like, even though I already photographed this side of the house, I'm just going in the side of the pretending
Make sure she doesn't take the
to
fine
take
china.
the photos.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to keep an eye on her because she just can't let herself right in.
Yeah, that was a wild experience. There's every transaction is different, and that was definitely one of those. That was a little bit of a wild ride.
What's your non-negotiable every day?
Every day. Okay. Yeah. Well, so this, I am a creature of habit to the max. Like, I like to do the same thing. I get dressed the same way, my socks, then my underwear, then my pants. Like, probably too much information, but I do it the same. I do the same thing, the order, the whole deal. So we're waking up before my kids wake up, and sometimes before Sarah's up. I walk the dogs and I get a workout in. Like, that is my day is terrible if I don't work out. So I think for me, Monday through Friday, if I can get a workout in, that's huge. I also take my kids to school every day, which is super important for me because, I get home at 6:00 at night and they're only up for an hour and a half. So it's like another 30 minutes, whatever, however much time that I get to spend with them in the morning, which is really nice. And while they have to hang out with me, they're going to, because they're going to get to a point where they're like, bye, Dad. Like, we got cooler people to hang out with. So I think that's a big one. And then family dinner, I think that's important because we can talk about our day. Sometimes, we ask the kids how their days were and they just say, fine. And other days we hear about the fun on the playground, or piano practice, piano lessons, or, they just started tennis at school. So like their tennis lesson, so it's fun getting to hear that stuff. So gosh, I mean, that's probably, workouts, driving the kids to school, family dinner with Sarah and the kids, is super important. And then I need track therapy. I need to go to the racetrack. Like Sarah understands that. That's probably a non-negotiable for me from the standpoint of like once a month, I need to do something. Self-care. No cell phone. Like literally there's nothing else other than me driving in a car. And I get home and I'm literally a better husband, father, real estate broker.
You're recharged.
I am 100%. And there's so many, outside interferences and outside stimulation that like, I got to shut that shit off. Like I try to not go on Instagram during the day. Like I try to not, even checking email. Like when I work out in the morning, I used to wake up and I would check my email. And it's like, oh, do I really need to be responding to emails at 5:15 in the morning?
Right.
Like, no, it can wait until 7:45. That's as late as I'll push it off because then I just get antsy. But like, you gotta take a breath, take a step back. And I think that's been a big important thing for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Brandon, thank you so much for coming on. We talked about a ton of stuff, real estate, fun.
I even got to ask you a couple questions
which
today.
Never happens.
Weird.
Yeah, I need to like prep more for this. I don't even know how, but please tell everyone, how can they get a hold of you? I know you have 2 different social media accounts depending on the type, but what's the best way to contact you? Let them know.
Yeah, through either website, Brandon Colbert Photography or Colbert Images. Both have 2 different portfolios of work. You can easily find me there. You could Google me, social media, Instagram, LinkedIn.
So if someone goes on and they Google Brandon Colbert Photography, they can get to your website. They can schedule, a time to reserve your time or have a longer conversation to see how you can help them achieve their goals.
That's exactly right.
Amazing.
Cool.
Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.